Welcome back to another episode of Scotch Hour. This is episode 108. I am Noah.
And I'm Jesse.
All right. Before we get started here, once again, thank you to all of our new subscribers on Rumble and YouTube and all of our audio platforms. We do greatly appreciate that. And we hope that you are enjoying our content. If you do like our content, please like, share, and subscribe. And leave some comments down below so that way we can respond back to you or take your feedback and utilize it. I do believe we have a pretty good lineup here this evening. We have Bladnoch 11 from the Lowlands. And then we have our Get It Together / shout outs. And then our restaurant review, which was Sahara Mediterranean Grill, I think.
Yeah,
I'm sure, something like
Sahara
that.
Mediterranean food.
And then our Smarter Challenge being John Wick 4 movie review.
Scotch Reviewed.
The first thing I do want to say, I do think it's a fairly attractive box, a little bit different, less, to me, less traditional shape and size. Man, feel this damn thing. It's like a damn rock. It's like, feels, there's a lot of glass or something heavy in here. So with this, we have the Bladnoch 11yr non-chill filtered, natural colored Lowland single malt Scotch whiskey. This is their limited annual release from 2021, and it is pretty intriguing to say the least. So with the Bladnoch and with all the Lowland Scotches, really, we've had some interesting flavor profiles, some things very different than the Highlands or the islands of Jura, Skye, or Islay. With the Lowlands, a lot of times the Scotches have not been as bold or flavorful. However, we've also had a couple surprises with that. And man, this is Bladnoch is the world's oldest privately owned Scotch whiskey distillery, still in flow. Noah found some pretty good facts for us here. The prior owner, prodigious passion for Scotch whiskey, together with a strong desire to restore the heart and soul of the local community. That led him to purchase Scotland's 200-plus-year-old Bladnoch distillery in 2015. A couple key points. Their water source is the Bladnoch River, and malts are from British growers for the single malt Lowland Scotch whiskey.
They are also located as being the most southerly distillery in Scotland.
From 1817, they do have a very rich history. So for nearly a century, did not change ownership. The McClellan family grew and modernized the distillery. And then, at 1905 and then 1966, over 80 years. Bladnoch Distillery changed hands several times and continued to produce fine lowland whiskeys. In 1956, Bladnoch Limited was created, and the stills which had fallen silent during the war were recommissioned. The still house was expanded to 4 stills in 1966, and Ian Gillan worked the stills at the time and used his new cinefilm camera to capture these scenes of the life of the Bladnoch distillery. 1983, more recently, the distillery was owned by Arthur Bell and Sons, which would later become part of the Guinness and United Distilleries. Between 83 and 93, a period during which the brand's distribution was increased and a visitor center was established. From 93 on, the distillery has been privately owned by Raymond and Colin Armstrong. However, in 2017, Australian entrepreneur David Pryor, who had acquired it, sold the Distillery to Ian McMillan, and who resumed production and celebrated 203 years in distilling. And man, it is one of the oldest, and it is one of the largest privately held distilleries on this great big planet of ours.
Yeah, so the tours that you mentioned, they have what's called the Classic Tour and Taste. This is where you get to discover how Bladnoch and pure Scotch whiskeys are crafted firsthand with the tour through the key site of 203-year-old distillery. And then they have the 1817 tour for a more in-depth look through their 205-year-old Bladnoch distillery, and then join for a knowledgeable team for a 2-hour tour and tasting throughout the estate. The current, did you mention this? I think you said did you mention the current distiller is Dr. Nick Savage?
I didn't mention that name. No, the master distiller. It's a cool name, though.
It is kind of a cool name, Nick Savage. I wonder if he says "whoa" or whatever, kind of like Randy Marshman Savage. Step into a Slim Jim.
Yeah, snap.
Step into a Bladnoch. Snap. Pop. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that guy still alive, or did the roids finally kill him?
I think he's still alive.
Damn. Lucky man.
Yeah.
All right, so with this Bladnoch 11-year single malt Scotch whiskey, it is aged in bourbon whiskey barrels, and it is a 46.7 ABV. So if not quite there, pretty darn close to cask strength. The box is a nice, mature, deep brown, almost black color with the copperish gold on the packaging is pretty sharp looking. The box leads to the bottle, a rectangular bottle, great big top, pretty fancy looking, and I believe that might actually be wood. That's what she said. It's gonna be a good night. With this, man, let's dig in. It's a good wood top.
That it is.
You gotta like when they give it a little extra detail for the packaging and the presentation.
All right. Well, on to our tasting notes, which is our warp speed time. So cheers.
Cheers.
For this lowland, it actually doesn't disappoint. I'm really impressed. I was really actually impressed the last time we tried it with I think it was the Samsara is what it was called. That's also a special release. And this one doesn't disappoint either. The color, which I kind of split up my glasses here, but I put it as like a light gold color. I really do like the coloring in there. You don't see a bunch of like impurities really in it. I think it seems like it's pretty nice. Has like a nice clear view to it. I gave it even though, cause I have a little bit more, I have a harder time giving a light colored Scotch a higher number. So I did give it like a 2 out of 5 points on the color. The packaging, I love the packaging. I think it's great. The box is nice and it looks very classy. I could deal with like a little bit less wording on there. I guess I just don't like too many words and stuff like that, but I like the kind of like the shiny, brassy gold color looking thing on there. How the 11 and the big B is. Yeah, I think the box is nice, but really for me, the win is the bottling itself. The bottle reminds me of like something that you could purchase as a decanter. So once you finish this scotch, you already have yourself a decanter with a nice wooden top and a cork in there. And I think that's a win. So for me, I gave the packaging a 4 out of 5. And the weight of the glass, that's to me is solid. You feel like some bottles, and it just seems like, geez, I don't even know how I made it here from Scotland.
I don't know how I made it from my car.
But this one here, you're like, man, I don't know what's going to destroy this one. It's going to take a little bit of effort to break this glass.
Shazam!
Shazam! Right? No, that was like a couple weeks ago. Oh wait, we didn't see that movie yet. Or I have. I've seen it. I've seen Shazam, the new one, 3 times now.
Jesus,
I love the movie. I think it's hilarious.
That's.
But in any case, on to the aroma. I didn't get like a ton of like different nuances, which I would probably give like a higher pointage for. So I didn't find it like super duper complex, but I found it simple and pleasing and inviting. I got basically like notes of honey, and a lot of floral, but, between the honey and the floral, there seemed like there's some other kind of sweetness that was involved. I couldn't really pinpoint it, and my best guess was butterscotch. And to me, it just seemed like it gives a nice, simple aroma that was very inviting. That had a nice, a nice hint of sweetness to it, to where it just made you want to explore this scotch and try it out. So with the aroma, I gave it a 25 out of 30, just because it was, the simplicity still impressed me by it. But I didn't give it like the upper tier type of points I would normally give like some of the other ones that we did like the past few weeks. Now, when it comes to the palate, here I get like honeysuckle, starting off with some honeysuckle with some floral notes and hints of oak. Once again, not a whole lot of complexity to me on the palate, but near the finish, this is where I started getting, right when it goes into the hints of oak, now I started getting like going into my finish, ending like the mid palate, going into the back palate and the finish. This is where the peppercorn and cinnamon starts to come into play, and it starts to it's nice and mellow from the front palate, the middle palate. You get the nice sweetness and the floral notes, and then all of a sudden, as it's finishing through the mid palate, going into the finish, this is where I started getting like I said, that spiciness of the peppercorn and the cinnamon. And the cinnamon is a nice, long finish. Like the cinnamon just draws out. But here at the very end, when it draws out, that spiciness does dissipate. And then you get a nice little surprise of slight sweetness from a cooked apple. And as you and I were talking, and the kind of cooked apple I'm talking about is like when you bite into like a nice apple pie or whatever. If you get like a piece of apple pie where it's not like all gooey, has all that gooey sweetness stuff over it, but it's just like the nice cooked apple with just like some hints of cinnamon. That's the kind of the cooked apple I'm kind of thinking of here, and I love it. I think it's great. So the finish, this actually got a little bit higher points of 26. The palate, I gave it 25. So my grand total was 85 points. So 4 for packaging, 2 for color, 25 for aroma, 25 for palate, 26 for finish. Would I take this a black tie affair? Probably not. And it's not because I don't like the packaging. I think the packaging in the bottle screams black tie affair. However, the scotch itself, to me, is not complex enough to where I would want to take it to a black tie affair. I would almost feel like I'm being a poser with that.
Poser.
But when I take it to a poker game, yeah, I take it to a poker game. Would I share it with friends? Yeah. Would I take it to a housewarming party? Yeah. To me, just a black tie affair. Even though I think the bottling and the packaging would say yes, I could do that. I just don't think the scotch is like what I would expect for a black tie affair event. Do I think you should purchase it? I do. I think it's something that you could have on your shelf and enjoy periodically. I'm not sure exactly what the price point is, but I'm sure Jesse will let us know.
This bad boy was on sale when we got it for $59.99, regularly $64, and that's here at Bevy's in Parker, Colorado. So regularly right around that $64 mark. And for me, also a pleasant experience with this Scotch. Man, where to start? Well, obviously packaging, right? Presentation. I also gave it a 4. There are some pieces where I want more, but at the same time, it is well done and it is presentable. It looks sharp on a shelf. The one thing that stands out to me, both good and bad, is it looks very much not Scottish to me. It very much so looks like it would be an Asian or a Scotch from another area of the world, another region, just because of the way that they did their coloring, the bottling, the packaging, the emphasis, the larger stopper on the top, all fantastic, all great. But it does leave me looking at it thinking that's not really Scotch as I walk by the first time. It's just whiskey. So for presentation for myself, I'm a little bit different with Noah and his feelings on the color. I do like a deeper color, but I also like a bright and vibrant color. And so with this one, and I believe Bladnoch themselves call this a lemon gold. That's exactly what it is. It is this gold color that is so clean and crisp. It is a lemon gold color. I enjoy that as well. So for me, the color, since it's natural as well, a 4. So we got 4 for presentation, 4 for color. On the nose. Oh, on the nose, it is a delicately floral. That is, it's funny to say very well pronounced because that would be opposite of delicate, but it is very well pronounced, delicately floral on the front, followed by a citrus sweetness that is honey and a little hint of that summertime grass, the front lawn, the field. That's that little finish on the nose. The nose, as far as the big 3, got the lowest of my scores at a 25. The palate is more involved, but I agree with what you said. One of the things that takes the Scotch from where this one ultimately rates for me to that next level is that layered complexity with different feelings, sensations, flavors, almost a bigger ride in the mouth, so to speak. So it is creamy smooth, honey with a hint of vanilla and cinnamon at the front. That's where the pepper and it balances it out in this weird sweet way, pepper and honeydew. So a melon flavor, the floral comes back around, and then the apple. You mentioned the apple. So for me, the apple's right up front, it goes away, and then it comes back in the middle, and it transitions to this wood spice. So that's the point along the palate where it's the driest on my tongue, and then it goes back to a sweet finish. It is a refreshing, almost crisp and clean cinnamon refreshment, where all of a sudden the flavor disappears for a moment, and then that apple, that carnival candied apple, just the apple, none of the extra additions to it, comes out and leaves it truly refreshing. one of the things they say about this is it's perfect for that cold day where you're sitting back and you're enjoying a fire. And I think they are absolutely right. But for me, one experience I would have that would be more impactful for me with this Scotch would be while reading. I think this is a perfect Scotch, leaving it crisp, not wanting, while I was reading some Hemingway or... Man, maybe I'm doing some Fitzgerald and some Gatsby. This is a great Scotch to sip slowly while reading because it makes its presence known, but it's not overwhelming, but it's still clean and crisp, and you're not constantly having to drink it. So altogether, the palate was a 26 for me. The finish a 27, grand total of an 86. And again, it is a clean, crisp, refreshing Scotch. With that, would I take it to a black tie event? Man, that's a tough one because at a black tie event, it's not about everyone else. It's about me representing myself. So I'm probably taking a Lagavulin, an Oban, or the Macallan to that event more than this. But I agree with you 100%. If they will enjoy a good Scotch and not a $30 bottle, but a $65 bottle normally, then this is a great Scotch to go to a poker night because it's not overbearing. It's not burdensome. It is clean. So I enjoyed it. It's one of my favorites from the lowlands, much like its sister Bladnoch before.
Well, it is. It's a good one. It's a great drink. 46, you said?
This one was 59, regularly 65, 46.7 ABV.
Okay. And because of math, I can't count. It's actually, I scored it in 82.
I was thinking about it. I was like,
It could be easily an 85. There's a couple of points that you could give it here. So since I said 85 in my poor math, I'll stick with an 85 and give it some extra points in the color.
It's time for our shout outs.
Do you have any shout outs this week?
I do. One going out to Aiden for wrapping up his driving hours, about to go for his driving test. Hopefully the win, driving till midnight to get those nighttime hours, will translate to a license for him very soon. But nonetheless, proud of him for having what I like to call one of those non-giving up moments, or a John Wick moment in life.
I have a shout out as well. It's going to go out to your brother's barbecue off of Arapahoe and I-25. I went there probably about a month, maybe a month and a half ago, and they had started like a one of those loyalty card things or whatever. So I filled out a piece of paper there. But from the time I went there last time and I filled out that piece of paper, they have upgraded themselves to actually going automated and putting onto onto an app and stuff. So when I tried to give them my phone number, the lady cashier, she's like, I can't find your information anywhere. I'm like, why did I filled out one of those pieces of paper thing? And then she's like, oh, that's because we just upgraded, so that's why it's not in our system. So I'll give you a free meal.
Next time, call me.
So I was like, sweet. So I got so she didn't have to do that, but she acted like I had enough points in order to get a free meal. So I just wanted to thank her and Brothers Barbecue for being really cool about the whole loyalty program and doing that. So, it doesn't cost a whole lot for a company to show a great customer service. I was more than willing to pay for it, but she insisted, saying since that whole switchover happened and I didn't know about it, that they'll do that for me. So I thought that was really kind of them, and I just want to say I appreciate it and thank you and shout out to you guys.
Nice, that's awesome.
Yeah. Any get-it-togethers?
Just the continued realization of our banking system woes. So they really do need to get their checks and balances in check.
We could probably talk about that forever.
That's why I cut it off there. Me.
But I will give my get-together to moviegoers. So a couple weeks ago, you brought this up, how you went to go see Creed and people trashed the movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, like, well, I hadn't seen that because the last couple times I've went to movies, I had gotten lucky. You know, there's like only like maybe a handful of people in there, and everyone picked up their trash anyways. But this weekend, going to see John Wick, people were terrible. They like there's trash all over the place, popcorn dumped in the hallways, and it was awful. It really was. It's like, and not only that, people were in the middle of the movie, had their cell phones on. People are talking during the movie. I think a lot of people lost movie etiquette after COVID. And I think it's a real shame. And I think these people need to get their act together. If you're going to go see a movie in a theater, yes, you're going there for for the entertainment and for the experience, but you're also there with a bunch of other people who are there for the same reasons. And you shouldn't really spoil that experience for other people by leaving the theater trashed or having your cell phone on during the movie or chatting with your neighbor throughout the whole movie. I think that shows poor etiquette.
I agree 100%. I don't know where it's coming from either. I also had a bad movie going experience with the cleanliness when I went to go see John Wick 4 with my kiddos. And at the last few times I went, I really thought it was a younger generation. So I was like, okay, is this the millennials or Gen Z that are feeling like they're entitled to leave this place a literal dump with popcorn everywhere, their trash, their cups, as if they have no responsibility to clean it up and leave it in a great shape as the other. However, when I went to John Wick 4 with Mila and Aiden this past weekend, I was sitting next to an older gentleman, probably 65, 67. And when I first was getting ready to sit down, he had his trash already all over my seat. And I could tell it was his because he had the bottom of his bag of food and the top was what was in my seat. And I looked at it and I looked at him and I'm like, really? Like, you're just going to throw your trash in my seat? He's like, oh, I'm sorry. He picks it up. Later on, though, when he left the movie, did not stay for the end credits. So I hope you missed out because there is an end scene. And with that, though, he left his drink on his seat. He left his M&M's bag on his seat. He left popcorn all over the floor in front of him. And, it's not even about whether or not you're paying for that. Did you tip the guys $10 to clean up after you? If so, good. They can do that. But you're ruining the other viewers' experience. And when I go and I see that and I have to step on that, and it's not that I want to, there's so much popcorn on the floor in front of this guy, I couldn't avoid it. It was disgusting. His etiquette, and I think that's the good word, the true word, the real word is he had zero movie going etiquette, and it's saddening. It's really tough.
Restaurant Review.
This week's restaurant was the Sahara Mediterranean restaurant right there off of Parker Road by Dayton Street.
All right, so when you first pull up, it would probably be pretty easy to miss because it's in a strip mall with a bunch of other like businesses. Although there are some other restaurants in and around that area in that strip mall. When you first walk into the actual restaurant, it does have some nice decor. I mean, it has like a very Mediterranean feel to it. You see some like genie lamps. I don't know what you call them. I call them genie lamps. And some vases. You got some vases there, and you got like depending on what table you sit at, I think they have like little maps or information about the region, and the music, I think, kind of sets the mood as well, like the music that they're playing there. I'm not really sure if it's Moroccan music or Mediterranean music, but it was decent music. And their menu was actually fairly decent as well. We went on a Monday, like we normally would go, but there was like nobody in this restaurant.
Cesar Chavez Day.
And I don't know, it seemed really weird that there was nobody there, but it made for the wait staff to wait on us fairly quickly without having to worry about anything. And they were very attentive. They didn't come by too often, and they didn't, I think they came by the right amount of times. The food that I got was the kebabs, which there was a shrimp kebab, a steak kebab, and a chicken kebab with some saffron rice. and was it called tiki sauce, I think, or something like that. I thought it was excellent. I love the saffron rice. The one issue I have with the saffron rice, though, is that there was definitely a couple of clumps where it was just a little bit too dry, but for the most part, it had great flavor. I really think the saffron rice was a total win. And I think if we went there like on a normal day, probably when they have like more business going through, the rice probably would have been more moist because they probably would have gone through a little bit quicker and had to make it a little bit more often and stuff like that. But I thought the meal was great. I really enjoyed my meal. I did have one beer with dinner, which was an Indian beer called Taj Mahal. I really like it. I think it's a great lager. And we had a appetizer, Baba Ganoush, or Baba
Ganoush. Baba Ganoush.
Baba Ganoush. Baba Yaga, yeah. But it does, like, I don't know what it's called, but
it's what it did to the inside of me.
And then for dessert, I had a walnut baklava, and that was actually really nice as well. The price point of this dinner, I'd say just it's going to be slightly. If you get appetizer and dessert, it'll probably be a little bit more than what you expect. You're looking probably right around the upper $40s to $50 range. If you just get the entree with maybe like a soda or water, you're probably looking at like right around the $20 range. The meal itself, this is a sit-down restaurant, so this is the medium tier. I wouldn't really say this is upper tier. What would you say? Medium or upper?
It's got to be medium because it's definitely not high-end, but it's about as close as you're going to get without being high-end.
Okay, so we're like on the upper tier of the medium tier.
Yeah.
Upper medium.
Upper medium.
So, okay, so we're in the upper medium tier here. The food, I'm gonna give it an 8. I really enjoyed the food. The service, like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of people there, so I'm gonna give the service a 9. The service was good. The atmosphere of the place, or the decor, I liked it. I'm gonna give that like an 8. So I'm gonna give it total overall 8.5. Would I take a first date there? I think it's first date worthy. Mm-hmm. I think would I go there to meet some friends? Probably not. I probably would go next door. I think there's like a sports group. Yeah, sports book, which is a sports bar right next door. So I probably would go right over there to go hang out with some friends to do that and drink some beers from the draft and eat some like nachos or whatever, tachos. So yeah, I probably wouldn't meet friends there unless it's like a special occasion, like they're doing like a birthday or an anniversary or something like that. But mostly, yeah, date, yes. If I want like something out of the norm, sure, I do that too. But yeah, overall, I give it an 8.5. I think it's a worthy experience. So if you're in or around the area of I-25 in Arapahoe, or just slightly, I guess, east of there, which is where you'd find Dayton, give the place a try. Let them know that Scotch Hour recommended it, or Noah from Scotch Hour recommended it. I'm not sure what Jesse's going to say yet, so I don't want to put words in his mouth. So I'll pass it along to you.
All right. So much like Noah, I did start off with a Taj Mahal, great lager. It really was a great lager. And the whole time on our way over, the one thing I wanted was a great cold beer, and the waitress did bring out a nice frosty glass to the point where I poured the beer into the glass, and when I was drinking it, the froth at the top had frozen and was icy, and it was perfect. So they definitely finished well with the start. As you mentioned, we had the Baba Ganoush. So what this is a roasted and smoked eggplant, basically turned into a paste with some olive oil, some garlic, some lemon. It was very good. They had some bread to go with it, and pita. And with that, it was enjoyable. Now, what I will say is, I probably overate. I don't know that I needed that. And then also having the same Baba Yaga on my dinner. So I had the Sahara plate or Sahara. So falafel, hummus, the Baba Ganoush, the flatbread, hero meat, chicken, beef. It was all actually delicious. And I can't say that after I had that beer, I was starving anymore because the beer satiated me to another level, but it all tasted good. Except for, I don't know about, is it the falafel? Is that what they call that? The little, I'm just not a huge falafel guy. I don't know it's just not my thing. That's not my shtick.
I don't get falafels either.
But much like Noah, I also did overeat and have some baklava. I had the pistachio baklava. Price-wise, this is the only thing that held this place back. Because value, ultimately, it was a 7 to an 8. Again, it was kind of surprising. I wasn't expecting the total to get that high that quickly. At the same time, the atmosphere was an 8. It was a good atmosphere. The service was a solid 8. The only reason they didn't get a 9 with the service for me is because once we had paid the tab, I still had a full beer to drink. Well, not really, 2/3 of a beer to drink, but the lady was like gone. She had received her cash and her tip, and the service was over, literally transaction completed. And I really prefer it when they just come back around one more time, because you never know if someone might want some extra water. Hey man, it's been a hot day. Can I have some water? Whatever it may be. The food itself was absolutely a 9. There was nothing wrong with any of it. So with that, it is one of those things to, would you take a date there? Man, if I'm in that neighborhood and I am feeling like some Mediterranean food, some of that food that almost has that Greek influence, if you will. Yeah, it's a fun place. It's a good place to go there, get a drink, some food. Try not to overeat. They are fair size plates. So the value being the 7 to 8, the atmosphere absolutely an 8, the service an 8, the food a 9. Overall, it gets an 8 from me. And I agree with the one thing you would say. And if I'm going to get a meal with a friend, 99 out of 100 times I'm going couple doors down, much like yourself, to the sports book for a better beer selection. And ultimately, I'm going to get some tachos or just an appetizer and not overeat.
Smarter challenges.
This week's Smarter Challenge, we have seen 1, 2, 3, and now John Wick 4, or as you know, it's got its own name amongst the community now, JW4.
JW4.
I'm going with it because it's much like JW1. So JW4, we went and saw in theaters. And, really to assess this, but more so as a standalone. This isn't really trying to compare it to the other movies, but you can't not bring up the other movies when you talk about John Wick 4 because of what experience you've had will absolutely impact the experience that John Wick Chapter 4 delivers.
Well, I think you do have to watch the first 3 to kind of watch 4. It's not totally standalone because without watching the first 3, one, you don't know why he's in there in the sewers pounding a wall at the beginning. 2, you don't really have a full understanding of what the high table, low, and under the table stuff is.
Under the table.
And you also don't know who the elder was and why it was important, why it was such a big deal that he killed the elder. So I think you kind of could you survive without watching the first 3? Sure. But I think to pick up on some of those other nuances, I think you kind of have to watch the first 3.
I don't know that you have the full experience if you don't watch the other 3, but really my focus here is as we review it, it's not, and this is a difficult one for me in particular, it's not to assess it simply based on the other three. It's not to say, okay, so was this a good volume 4 in this series? Because if you take that out, it does have a different feeling.
Yeah.
All right, so what are your general thoughts? John Wick Chapter 4, did it start the way you expected it to? Did it flow the way you expected it to? And did it end the way you expected it to?
Okay, so it didn't quite start the way I expected it to. Because I think if you, and here, this is where I'm probably different from you because I'm not looking at it purely as a standalone. I think when you see from John Wick 1 to John Wick 2, he's still trying to get his car back and stuff like that. And then so it kind of picks up right away right there. From John Wick 2 to John Wick 3, he just finally got done doing whatever. And then, killing in John Wick 2, he kills the
head of the Italian table.
Head of the Italian table.
Yep.
And then he gets excommunicado, and then from there he has to go try to get his. So it's almost like it picks up right away. And then the problem with 3 going into 4, and I guess I can understand why you don't really see why it didn't start where I would have wanted it to start, because when it goes from 3 to 4, he falls off the roof and he's pretty much banged up and dead. He's almost on his deathbed, and so I think I would have liked to see more of and maybe this because this is maybe more of the Rocky and Creed type of feel I would like to see, but I would have liked to see him do a little bit more training than just pounding a wall, bloody knuckles, and have a little bit more of an explanation about that room that he's in and training, because it looks kind of cool. They light up this big I can't tell if it wasn't quite an octagon, but it wasn't a triangle either. But the way they lit up the room and stuff like that, it's kind of I wonder. I wish we could have seen a little bit more of a background to what was going on with that room and that training area. And so I wish it would have just started a little bit earlier than that part where they started off at. But it wasn't a bad starting point. I just kind of wish it would have a little bit more of a background right there. Our backstory, I should say. The flow. I think the flow is great. It's what I expected from a John Wick movie. I think it was great. I liked it. I like how one of the biggest things I really enjoyed is that I've spent some time in Europe. So I've been to Paris. I've been to Berlin, and seeing some of the sites that they show there. Anytime I see a movie that shows places where I've been, it just adds an extra flair to the movie, and I really enjoy. I've been to the Brandenburg Gates, I've been to the Arc de Triomphe, I've been to the Eiffel Tower. So all these big places, I've seen them in real life, and just kind of it just adds a whole new feature to these movies. It makes it more fun, at least for me, anyways. And that aspect, the one part that I thought was kind of reminiscent, if you ever seen the old movie The Warriors, it's a gang movie. They're in New York and they're trying to get back. There's a big gathering of gangs, and the Warriors are this. I don't know what they did or whatever. I just know they're trying to get back to their home spot. And as they're trying to go from wherever this big meeting was to wherever they their turf is, they have to go through and fight all these other gangs to get to this end spot. And that's what John Wick 4 kind of reminded me of, because once he gets to Paris and sits down with the Marquis. Spoiler alert. Anyways, sorry if you guys haven't figured this out. But
if you haven't figured out we're going to ruin movies for you by now, dude, you're slow.
But anyways, once he finally meets up with the Marquis to set terms, and then and the night time begins to where he has to be at the church by dawn. That was totally reminiscent of The Warriors, because in that old, I think it's a 70s movie, you hear a radio broadcaster talking about the Warriors are in different areas of New York, and each gang from that area goes and attacks the Warriors. Same thing kind of happens here in John Wick, but more of a John Wick fashion, which obviously is more up to date and way cooler in my opinion. And the ending, wow. The ending, the way they did it is good. You could see how it could, if they weren't going to redo in episode 5, I'm sure we're going to be talking about this a little bit later, maybe not, I'm not sure. But if they decide not to do an episode 5 or chapter 5, it gives you an ending that John Wick's dead. But they leave the door open just enough to where maybe it's played off as he is dead and he's really not dead, because there are some things that I saw in the movie too. And even though we listened to an interview of the director right before we started, but you do see the dog kind of look off to the side, and the way Winston answers Larry Fishburne's character, I forget what his name is. I just know him as the King.
Yes, he is the king, basically.
But the way he answers him is very a lot of ambiguity into his answer, because Larry Fishburne character asks, like, do you think he went to heaven or hell? And he's like, who knows where he went, basically. And so I think that was kind of leaves the door open, and hopefully they do come back with chapter 5. Because even though like it gives you an ending and it has a little bit of ambiguity to that ending, so you can kind of think whatever you want to think. Like, is John Wick the assassin dead, but John, the husband, is still alive? Is that still there? Or is like John, the husband, is dead? And that's why on the tombstone it says John Wick, the loving husband, and John Wick, the assassin, still lives. I don't know.
Jonathan.
Yeah. And the other things I like too is I like the whole Japanese scene. I thought the daughter of the Japanese continental manager, I thought she was super hot. I just throw that in there.
Rina Sawayama.
Yeah.
Something
her.
like that.
Nailed it, right?
Akira. That's all we need to know. Her actress's cast character name, Akira.
But I did enjoy the movie. It's probably not my favorite John Wick movie, but I think there's some really great parts. The one thing I kind of had an issue with a little bit was the antagonist. I guess would be the top antagonist would be the Marquis, but I guess like the step below, which being the blind guy, which is Kane. I really didn't dig him as a guy to go up against John Wick, because
Donnie Yen playing Kane. Yeah.
I just don't like, for me, for some of the things that he does as a blind guy, I'm like, maybe blind people have like some stuff that I just don't see how he did some of the stuff. I guess if you kind of go like more down like Daredevil type of avenue, sure. But I think they probably could have found a different bad guy. But overall, the character wasn't that off-putting. I mean, he's still entertaining. And, you can tell like him and John were friends at one time, and maybe still friends, or just in a shitty situation.
That's a very shitty situation. All right, for myself, did it start the way I expected it to? You can't say you expected John Wick to start any way other than high octane. And it did start, albeit in a desert on horseback, high octane, with John going after the elder in search of one thing. And that was his ring, but also, I think, to send a message. And at the beginning of each of these movies, there is a message that is sent. There is a message that is received or communicated. And so it did start the way I expected it to, which is someone starting something that's going to cause a large ripple, and a tidal wave will cometh for you. So along the middle of the movie, man, this movie did not seem like it was 2 hours and 49 minutes long.
3 hours.
3 hours. 2 hours, 49 minutes long seemed like less than 2 hours, if you're asking me.
I agree.
It was action-packed, and my initial thought was, okay, so they definitely just cut a bunch of crud out, made 2 movies into one. Something had to have happened with COVID or something else, but as your research proved, that wasn't the case at all. What happened was they had some extra time, and they filmed it as they ultimately decided it was right to do. Now, with that, the one thing I do believe that the director Chad Stahelski,
Sure, nailed it.
Chad, and Keanu Reeves did well. Keanu Reeves is that they did leave it like an old author's tale, like a Hemingway poem, short story, or a book, which is they leave some ambiguity and some questions for your own imagination to fill. And that audio clip that you had, he really spoke to that. And the more that resonates within my thought process, I love it. And I think that that's fantastic. The way it ends is not the way at all I went into this movie the first time expecting it to end. However, it really wasn't off-putting. And you already kind of started going into characters, so I'll mention a couple characters, and then we'll continue with that. And one of the things that I actually thought was fantastic was Kane's character, played by Donnie Yen. I thought he was a fantastic character as being someone coming after John Wick with a similar skill set, albeit he may be blind.
So I agree. Like the way he acted, the way the character was, I think he was a great character. I just have a hard time believing like a blind person could do some of these things.
Hey man, I've seen blind people read faster than people who have eyes, so nothing surprising.
It's possible. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, it's just like you have to be a little bit like, you know, like you have to bring a little bit of Daredevil into it. Which you brought up.
Yeah, with his character, I think there are a couple key points here to me when I think about his characters and Kane's interactions with Wick. There are the pieces, especially towards the end, when John Wick is kicked down 222 stairs and has to go back up with basically 3 minutes to go. And Kane looks at him and says, John, I need you to get up and get to the top of those stairs. And it's interesting because I'm not saying John abides, but John hears it and he does it. And Kane helps him the whole way. They work together, which absolutely also can be another tangent somewhere down a John Wick movie going experience. But it was fantastic the way the two played opposite, but also with one another.
Well, I think right there, this kind of comes into play when Kane and the manager from the Osaka Continental, when they talk about friendship, and the manager from the Osaka Continental told Kane, it doesn't take a blind man to know what is the correct path. And he also mentions to Kane about you once knew what friendship meant, and you don't have to have like a marker. Or you don't have to be, you don't necessarily need to have like I guess like a contract, to say that you have a debt to a friend. And so he was really putting that emphasis on being a friend. And I think this is a really good thing here too, that I have to point out about the manager, is that friendship is easy when times are good. And because like John had apologized to him for showing up there, knowing that would cause him trouble, and I think that's a great point though, because a lot of times, are you a sunshine? Are you like a summertime friend where you're just there for the good times, or are you going to be a friend, like a true friend that will be there all the time? And sometimes, I think people might lose their way, but I think if you kind of like think about that, I think that's a great meaning in this movie, because I think. Coming to the part that you're talking about where Kane helps John go up those stairs, they were friends at one point, because that gets told somewhere in there. And I think they knew that they needed their friendship in order to get out of this crappy situation that they were both in.
Yes. And that's probably my favorite quote of the movie is the one you're speaking to. Friendship means a little when it's convenient.
I messed it up, but I had it.
I think it is dynamic in the fact that it is true. In other words, you don't build friends and friendship because of convenience. You build friendship because of the difficult times that you have been through when you helped each other up 222 stairs after you'd been kicked down, and you're literally wondering, how do I keep going?
So I think this brings up, now that we're talking about friendship, and I was thinking about this, and I'm not really sure what the true answer here is, because the manager of Osaka Continental gave a true gift to John.
Yes.
By allowing him to be there. And he also, he gave John probably the ultimate gift, which was death. He did it to help protect his daughter, but it was also because of John as well. So that's what I'm saying. He kind of gave the ultimate gift. Then the daughter, especially when you talk about Asian culture, there's a lot of honor involved. And Cain, who had lost his way or lost a friendship and didn't see the right path, I guess, maybe around that time. Not that he didn't try to give an out, because he did. He said, I didn't want to do this. And he's like, don't keep fighting me. I don't want to kill you type of thing. But the other guy, bound by honor, had to keep fighting. But in any case, the daughter goes and sees John Wick and says, either you kill him or I kill him. So fast forwarded to Cain helping John, and they're both needing each other and falling back basically onto their friendship, and him falling back onto the right path, talking about Cain. John, at this point, he's almost honor bound to not avenge the death because of what Cain did for him. So it's almost like John is in a lose-lose situation here. Are you honor bound to still kill Cain because of the manager from Osaka Continental, or are you honor bound to help Cain and have him survive and gain his freedom because he helped you get your goal? It's a conundrum there, and I don't know what the right answer would be.
Well, throw another tangent into that twist in the fact that at the end, John Wick looks Cain dead in the eyes and honestly says, "You owe me one."
Yeah. Which he does.
Well, especially after that tragic turn of events.
So I don't know what I don't know how one would choose to do. Do you kill him or do you leave it to her? Because she's going to hold it against you too later on.
When it comes to certain people, he can't. I'm not even going to guess what happens there. But I will say, throughout the entire film, there is an underlying significance to friend. So you have Ian McShane, who plays Winston, or Winston Scott, the manager of the New York Continental. And when it comes time to put a message on a tombstone for Charon, his concierge from the New York Continental, it is simply one word. And that word was friend.
Was it written in Latin?
I didn't even look. After he had mentioned it, I just assumed, but I thought it was English. From what I remember, I think it was just English friend.
Okay, because looking at that, when I saw it the second time, I may have to go see it the third time now.
I'm definitely seeing it. Dude, you saw Shazam 3 times. You better see John Wick 4 3 times.
JW4, man, get it right.
JW4.
Because I thought on the tombstone that he was standing by, it looked like it was Latin, but I couldn't really tell for sure. Maybe I just wasn't reading it right. Maybe,
You might be reading it completely right, because there is significance to Latin with meanings and future
and being part
significance.
And being part of this whole world, John Wick world, I think there's a lot of meaning. There's a lot of things having to do with Latin and stuff in there. Any case, not really sure. But you're right. I think there's that tone of underlying tone of friendship, as well as consequences and
well, the one other potential significance of Charon, the concierge's name, is the name of the ferryman to the underworld.
Ooh. I didn't pick that up.
But I would have to do further research. I couldn't pull up anything super quick as far as the tombstone. But from what I remember, I think it's just English for friend. But you never know. Loving husband, that was definitely English because it was next to loving wife.
I think another cool thing to do probably, and we'll probably have to wait till it goes on to Blu-ray or digital format.
Pause.
Yeah, is pause it, but as he's going up the stairs and see what each one of those stairs say.
Yes, I was looking at all of that, and I'm assuming it's in French because it takes place by a French church, but I have no idea about.
I thought that's where you met Winston.
Oh, well, there's messages on the steps up, the 222 steps up the French church to the church too.
I missed that.
But yes, I know what you're talking about now, up to the burial site. Yeah.
Was that Latin?
I think that was Latin for sure.
Okay.
Because it was not. I remember trying to read it, and I'm like, I don't know Latin. And I'm assuming it was Latin. I don't know that it was Latin because I can't read it. And if I could, I wouldn't tell you.
I'm sure that it has to have meaning because, like, why would you film that if it doesn't have some kind of meaning there? So hopefully,
especially since they had shoveled off those steps, but then once you got to the top and there was no more meaning, snow.
So hopefully, some nerdy dude out there will figure that out and put it out on a website somewhere.
We can look it up. It's a good research project. It's a point to learn Latin.
Some nerdy guy out there in the internet world, please do that.
I got it, Noah. Next on Scotch Hour, Nerdy Guy and John Wick 4 step message.
Right?
Noah! All right, so with that, you've mentioned some of the different characters. What were some of the other feelings, just general feelings you had during John Wick 4 about John Wick?
It really seemed like
I've got inner turmoil still trying to figure this out for myself.
it really, there's scenes where I think you look at John Wick, and even though like we don't live in that kind of world, we're not assassins or super badass killers or whatever. And
Speak for yourself.
but I think there's some things you can relate to as far as like what you go through with in life, as far as like when you do like I forget what the terms that they use. I forget what the other word, but there's like when you do something and you have the consequences of it. I think that plays out very much in that. And then friendship as well. And I think you see the inner turmoil going on with him about how he feels about having to go up against a friend who's now a foe, who now you have to later on rely on as a friend again to get out of a bad situation. And also you see him like realize that sometimes when you do things, what's the end game? Like, why are you doing whatever you're doing? Like, have you thought about like 4 steps ahead? Like when you do this, what's after that? And you kind of see John Wick go like, when he's talking to Winston's like, so once you kill this person, what are you going to do next? So like, what then? You're like, cause they're going to just keep coming at you because they're just going to put a new person in place. And you see all of a sudden like John Wick going like, yeah, I didn't really think about that.
Until then, but then afterwards you see the play with Winston and the end tombstone.
Yeah.
Loving husband.
So, and it's kind of weird, like, with Winston and him, you kind of see him kind of like, you always have an angle, and Winston's like, yeah, doesn't everyone have an angle? And I think that kind of like shows in reality too, like, everyone has an angle no matter who they are. Like, like, do you have an end game? What's your angle? And even friends have angles, I guess. But I think at the same time, like some friends don't always have an angle, but they're there for more advice, maybe kind of like the Osaka manager.
So I will say, in my perspective, friends should have an angle. The difference is whether or not you trust that person enough to know that their angle isn't intended to go against yours. And that is what friendship is about. You're not on the same path. You're taking different forks around the road all along the way. However, whether or not you make it to the same destination, you never go out of your way intentionally to put a wall in front of that other person. And that is part friendship, is that piece of, hey, I was never trying to cock block you, bro. It just happened, whatever it may be. Just one terrible example, by the way. Not that John Wick ever gets cock blocked.
No, but I think, but having a good friendship and knowing about like those different angles, I think that also kind of comes into play with him and Kane. Like, yeah, Kane's like, yeah, I had to do this because of family. He's like, yeah, family.
Trust. Again, when I say trust, that isn't trusting that they have your best intention at the front of their mind. That would be dishonest to them and yourself.
Yeah.
And what they do, though, have is the trust that, hey, we know we've been honest to a terrible degree of, John, if I get a chance to kill you, I will. And Kane, yeah, if I have to kill you to get to where I'm going, I will. They both know this, and they both trust each other implicitly based on neither of them are lying. I'm not going to hurt you. Just come over here, little fly.
See, and I think because of like that trust and that friendship, I think right when John near the end says, well, what if there's a way basically to where you don't have to worry about your daughter and you don't have to kill me and I don't have to kill you. Like, he doesn't actually spell it out that way. He just says like, well, what if there's another way?
Yeah.
And I think that's where that trust comes into play, that basis of having a trust of a friendship and knowing each other's angles of like what situations they're in. Like, they don't necessarily want to kill each other, but they know like the situation poses like to where they have to kill each other. But John has thought about it like, well, there might be another way we could get through this. And I think they don't really show it, and I don't know if they actually really talk about it, or maybe maybe in their friendship a long time ago, they might have talked about how if we ever get into a situation like this, how could we get out of it? Because it seems really weird that they have that saying right there when they get to like 10 paces away from each other about talking about like a person who, was it something about
those who chase life find death.
And those who chase death find life. Which also is a very good. Those are also pretty good quotes.
There were many good quotes.
Because there's a lot of truth to that. Because those who cling on to life find death. Because if all you're doing is like trying to just do whatever you can to survive or to live, you won't experience life, and you
Right.
you find death. Whereas those who've accepted death, like death is coming, they. You see this all the time where people have like near-death experiences, and all of a sudden like their lives flourish after that because like life is precious. I don't know when,
And I think that to your one of your many previous points was John Wick is literally letting him know at that point, hey, take a second, literally 1 second, think about this. I have to find death to find peace, to get life. And you are seeking this life, but have to give death to get peace and therefore life. And ultimately, it plays out exactly as anticipated in that they're both taking life, so to speak, and giving death or experiencing the opposite to get to a real destination for themselves and for not.
Yeah. And, another moral dilemma that, or not really, I guess, maybe for the character is Mr. Nobody.
Dude, Mr. Nobody is great as far as he is just a tracker. And I can only think that he is again, you got to wonder where he gets this notebook, right?
Yeah, you do.
And the only thing I can think of based on the dog and the dog's markings is that he is, the actress's name is Halle Berry from Part 3.
Do you think it's her son?
I don't know if it's her son or her protege, but I think he absolutely is in one way or another related to her, and that is her notebook.
That's a good point. I thought about that too. And because like the dog does I think the dog.
It has those markings.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, but for him, because he is tracking John. And I think the issue here with him is like he gets to a point where it's like a moral judgment call too, as you saved my dog. Do I still kill you for the money, or do I kill this other guy and let you go?
Well, again, what am I seeking? Am I seeking life and I'm going to find death, or am I seeking death to get life? And at the end of the day, I thought it was exaggerated, overplayed, if you will, when he kills the one guy and the dog.
I thought that was hilarious. I think that's hilarious. Like, we'll tell the movie, the audience laughed at that part. So I think it's funny.
Dude, I will say, for as violent as JW4 is, I have not heard an audience laugh as hard as they have in that theater with that much death, blood, and gore as I did in that audience. The audience loved it. And I have heard that the AMA Ask Me Anything that Keanu Reeves did for John Wick 4 is the first one to beat and shatter the records that previously Barack Obama had
You don't say that
held.
name here.
Which one? Barack?
That one. Or the other one.
Pick a guy, any guy, Mr. or Mrs. Obama.
You don't say that name.
It is an interesting thing that it was questionable whether or not this movie, which did, I believe it was 78 million opening weekend, definitely biggest for John Wick openings. How did anyone think it wasn't going to go big?
Well, I think you and I kind of talked about this too. Where was the advertising for this movie?
They spent no money on it.
So we should probably bring this up too. Originally, this was greenlit to do back-to-back filmings of 4 and 5. But when COVID happened, as the director said, they gave them more time to think about stuff, and they just extended and shot a longer 4, and then they put 5 up on the shelf. Now, after this box office weekend having great numbers, the studio says that 5 is back on. But when you listen to the director, he's like, well, maybe not. Like, it kind of depends on, like, if we can come up with a good storyline, and if Keanu Reeves wants to come back and do another one.
Yeah, he's like, Keanu and I are on vacation. We're taking some time off.
Which, if you've done any kind of research or any other articles out there, it seems to hold true, because there's been other articles where it talks about they're not going to make any decisions until after it premieres in Japan, which for some odd reason, from some articles I read, says that they're not going to get the movie until September.
Which is crazy because Russia's already gotten it.
Yeah. I don't know if I really believe that article or not, but it does make sense that they would want to take time to step away and do some other projects, and then come back and see if they can't put together another great story, which I think there's still a lot to tell about this world, whether it is with John Wick or I like to explore maybe Mr. Nobody a little bit more, as well as the Akira, because you don't just show an end credit scene for no reason. There's got to be a reason for their other, and you don't cut it off where they cut it off where Akira is approaching Kane, and you don't know whether or not she kills him or he kills her,
or if John Wick steps in between,
or exactly, because that's what I'm saying. It leaves a door open. There has to be something other than this. And then we already know that there's going to be a ballerina spinoff, and then there's going to be a spinoff of The Continental, which is going to be on Peacock, I believe. Which
takes
is going
place
to be
in the 70s.
Yeah, young Winston.
Yes.
And there was something else I wanted to mention, but oh well, forget it.
Well, one of the things also to take note with this movie is their intentional character, ultimately development and emphasis right down to the bad guy in Germany, where he's this big guy,
Big German guy.
like in the Batman movies, where all of a sudden you've got a giant guy with gold teeth with a funny accent and slick back hair and his inhaler, and the guy only dies when he falls 3 stories and literally cracks his skull open. You have Winston with makeup where he was pretty natural in the previous films, and all of a sudden you see his emphasized under eye white eyeliner to really make him look, I want to say, less human, more something else. John Wick, for the first time, looking human, and I think that was absolutely intentional. And you pointed out Kane, a blind man, keeping up with John Wick. How can this happen? And that is one of my bigger questions: is how do we get to this point where the unstoppable Mr. Wick is seemingly average? And the only thing at this point, which is wonderful, is he does actually play smarter and not harder to win the end game.
That's true. And I think another thing that'd be kind of interesting to see in this world is the other 12 families. I think we've only really been introduced to one family, which is John Wick's family, and possibly 2, which is the Marquis family, and 3, because you had the Italian family from John Wick 2.
Yes.
And I think it's interesting at the very end, also, you see Winston's tattoo, which happens to be the same insignia as the family that John Wick is a part of. Something Roma, I forget, or I don't know what they're called, something. Sorry, my eye keeps twitching, so I'm kind of like fighting through it.
So much John Wick going on. It is interesting, and you mentioned that Scott Adkins, who plays Killa Harkin, the femme fatale head of the German table, still trying to figure that one out, partially because I don't understand her name. But
aren't they supposed to be Bosnian? Because she said that in their crest, when they're like getting ready to burn their crest on, so that he's a child of Bosnia or something like that.
I'll take it. I'm curious even what the other tables are.
Yeah.
To your point, let's develop there, and then why? Ultimately, if he continues, where does John Wick go?
I don't know. What would be an acceptable ending for John Wick for you? Is it death? So is it like riding off into the sunset?
It's funny because you think about that end quote, and if he fakes his death, he ultimately potentially finds life. Now you have another truth that has followed John Wick his entire life as we know it, which is this is a life he has not been able to escape. And we are who we are. And one of the lifelong challenges, questions, comments is people can change. People can't change. Can people change who they are at the core? And we all want to say that they can. But if that was the case, when John Wick's wife had died and John Wick's dog had been killed and John Wick was left near dead and beaten, if he wasn't the same person he was at the core and always going to be, he would have walked away then. And so if there is a John Wick 5, he is once again faced with, he is who he is, and he's confronted by a challenge that hits him at the core, and he does not walk away once again. He goes to the quick. He goes to the center of that candle.
Well, I would think that's true because once again, when you look at his tombstone, it says John Wick, loving husband. So I think John, the loving husband, is dead. But, I don't know.
You never know. Maybe John Wick 5 is him over there in some Japanese little sand garden where he's just raking sand and saying, "Be gone, evil."
In a way... I like to see him tie back into a Continental takeover, like maybe the New York Continental, and replace Winston.
See, you've mentioned that. I want to see him take over one, if not all, of the chairs at the high table.
I mean, that would be another cool ending where he wipes out the high table.
But as we were talking about during our interesting dinner at Sahara, where I really would see him coming back is in the ironic tragedy that now there is another evil out there so big and strong that he has to work with the High Table to end them for the better of humanity. Or someone's daughter. Akira. Who,
I'm pretty sure Mr. Nobody and Akira are going to be in the next movie.
I hope so, but John Wick owes Akira.
He does.
Because that debt was passed down from the father to John Wick. And he owed the father. Now he owns Akira.
Yep.
All right. Any last words you have on John Wick Chapter 4?
I don't.
We could probably literally go on for a week nonstop talking about the different prospects, future potentials of this movie. It was delightful. However, for the first time,
go see it.
Yeah, go see it three times. No, you're absolutely right. Go see it 3 times and realize that for the first time for me, I saw a man that was mortal. And that was interesting since I'm no longer 21. I'm like 25 now, since we're no longer 21. And you get a couple years older and seeing him become mortal, it's like what ultimately comes of all of us. And this is a reality that we all must face. And where does he ever find peace?
I think that's a good thing. Peace. Like,
it is.
Because there's that question that asks him, are you at peace now?
It is the one thing that everyone that is wise seeks. It's not combat. It's not money. It's not riches. It is not the ultimate vacation. It is peace. And what comes with that sometimes means war.
True. All right. Next week's Scotch.
Next week, Noah has selected for us the Torabag Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. This is a 2017 Legacy Series from the Isle of Skye.
All right. And next week's Smarter Challenge, we'll just keep it with the movie reviews, I guess. And we'll do Dungeons and Dragons.
I'm glad you said that, because if you shot Shazam one more time, I was going to have a situation. Not really. I'm sure it's fantastic. The first one was. We
might as well just get the use out of our AMC A-lister memberships and do another movie review and spit it out for you guys and see if it is a fun ride as it appears to me.
It looks like a fun ride. Chris Pine, when he's being Chris Pine, is hilarious.
Exactly.
He's the man I wish I was 30 years ago when I was like 5 years old, because he's acts like an infant.
Had to be paid to do it, millions of dollars.
God damn, what a lucky guy.
I know, right? All right, for all of you who stayed with us throughout this movie review and Scotch review and restaurant review, we thank you for watching us. Thank you for all of you who watch us on YouTube and Rumble and listen to us on all the different Audible platforms. We greatly appreciate you, and I'll pass along to you, Jesse.
All right, please remember to drink responsibly, even when you drink a lot. And part of that is do not drink and drive. Remember, there are plenty of parents out there, mothers and fathers, and the last thing you want to do is not drink responsibly and have someone come John Wick after your ass, because that will be an end game. So drink responsibly. Please continue to give us feedback. Anyone who has given us feedback has noticed we've used it. We use the point scale. We're doing some different things. We will continue to do so. So please tell us what you want, because part of what we are trying to do is really make you guys have a better experience, because it's also fun for us. Exactly. We like to win. All right. Life is great. And Scotchman!
We hope you enjoyed this evening's episode of Scotch Hour. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, if you have not done so already, please become a Patron member, with memberships starting as low as $1 a month. Thank you, and hopefully you have a wonderful evening.